So much hyperbole, so many empty promises, such heartache, headache, confusion. I'm not talking about your last failed relationship. We're talking election time, baby. Yes, it's that wonderful time again when the left and right come out swinging, leaving truth, respect, and civil discourse at the door. Likely you're aware of the issues. The economy, Bill C-51, Aboriginal rights, oil, Syrian refugees, the environment, veterans' pensions, daycare, affordable housing, federal minimum wage, the list goes on. And each party has just the man or woman for the job, or so we're told. So, why do we vote the way we vote? Is it our hope for a better place to live? Fear of a worse place to live? Our convictions? Our wallets? What was ingrained in us in early life? Whatever the motivation, it's our duty to be as informed as we can before we cast that vote. Hey Calgary, thanks for joining us. I'm Kevin Chorney. Tonight, we're talking, the federal election. Right around the corner here, I'm joined by some great guests. Tom Flanagan, author, political scientist, U of C public policy professor. Thank you, sir, for being here. And Dave Benninger, poli-sci student and political commentator. And thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, we'll jump right into it. I want to get both your opinions. What is the most significant issue so far during this election that really hasn't received the notoriety that it should?
Well, I would say the niqab issue and all the things that are connected to that, because it doesn't stand alone. That issue has been kind of a sleeper until this recent days, and then it's suddenly taken off in Quebec, and I think it would have the possibility to spread into other provinces as well. I don't know. I think it depends on how hard the Conservatives want to push it. We had the Bloc Québécois pushing it in Quebec.
Yep.
I think if the Conservatives choose to push it elsewhere, this could end up dominating the rest of the campaign, which up until now, up until the last few days, it's been kind of a marginal issue.
See, I'll touch on that in just a sec. Dave, I want to throw the same question to you. As far as you're concerned, what is the issue that has really fallen under the radar that should be receiving more attention?
Well, the environment. It seems the parties are in some sort of competition to see who can talk the least about the environment and what they're going to do with it. The NDP, because if they talk too much about it, they might lose the voters who tend a little more towards the Conservatives, and the Conservatives for the same reason. They don't want to lose the voters who a voting issue is the environment. On the niqab issue, to me, that's not a voting issue. I can't believe after 9 years of a Conservative government that people are really...
I got to be honest, I kind of think that's the red herring issue of the election thus far, Tom. I mean, here it is. The niqab issue is something that really no political party is going to have as much influence over as they clout do. Let's be honest. I mean, this is not something that's going to be handled by the executive branch. This is something that, of course, the Supreme Court of Canada will need to handle.
Well, of course, everything can be appealed to the courts, but the court decision that we have seen in recent days was based not on charter rights, but on the method by which the minister sent down the order to deny citizenship ceremony to a woman wearing a niqab. The Conservatives in their platform say they're going to pass legislation to that effect, which is what they probably should have done in the first place if they wanted this result. So the courts would then have to debate the constitutionality of that legislative provision, which they have not done yet. Mm-hmm. So you may be right in the very long run, but in the shorter run, I think this thing has great political potential. And the polling that's been done on it shows that there's a majority in every province and in every party for against the niqab in the citizenship ceremony, and probably in other venues as well if you asked. So it's rare that you find an issue like that. And if the Conservatives want to pick that up and run with it, they've got their main opponents on the other side of it. So
well, which and they clearly have picked it up, and
they could do a lot more. They could run ads with it. They could, Mr. Harper could work it into his daily speeches. Up until now, they've just sort of responded to questions about it. They haven't really pushed it hard, but there would be a potential to put. Now, will they do it? I don't know, but I would say this is something that we should be watching, because I think it would have the potential to kind of take over if they decided to push it hard.
You think we're going to get there?
I hope not, because honestly, this less than 100 people a year want to wear a niqab on their face for the citizenship ceremony. Their identity has already been verified earlier on, and they're basically already citizens. The ceremony is that. It's a ceremony. It's not actually when they become the citizens. So to me, again, it's not a voting issue. It's less than 100 people a year, and But I do agree with Dr. Flanagan that it may have some traction for the Conservatives, and that may be the wedge issue that they're looking to push into a campaign that is not really going the way they wanted to.
The environment. You don't hear, you don't really hear a whole lot of any, like Dave touched on, any of these parties really championing, the cause of the environment. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm not sure that I agree that it's that low key. I mean, I agree it's not
because it's polling huge
top of mind every day.
It's a big issue for people, right?
Yeah,
Number two.
but as a kind of an abstraction, yes. When you confront people with the cost of it, that's a different story. Now, Mr. Mulcair unveiled his cap and trade thing over the weekend. The Liberals have unveiled something as well. Both of these policies are, like there's a lot of slippage in them.
Yeah.
But they have announced policies, and the Conservatives have their record of achievement or non-achievement, and depending on how you want to look at it. Yeah. So I think the environment is there, but I agree it's not dominant. But I don't think it's been completely neglected either. Each party has put something in the window.
Is each party equally guilty when it comes to discussing the environment? Do you think, Dave?
No. I would say the Conservatives are the most guilty. They're the governing party. They've been there for 9 years. We're at a critical time period in what the globe is going to do to address this issue. We've got a Paris conference coming up in a couple of weeks. Whoever the government is after the election is going to have to go there with a plan. I mean, the Conservatives already should have articulated a very clear plan. They're the ones who have had their hands on the levers of power for the last 9 years, almost 10 years. So, I mean, in my mind, they're the most guilty. They have the most to explain what they've been doing and what they plan to do in the future.
Well, Dave sounds like a believer in the myth of global warming. I regard this as a moral panic and a bogus issue, frankly, so that the less is done, the better.
The myth of global, wow, this could be a show in itself.
The myth of anthropogenic global warming. Yes, we've had a run of a warm spell up and down, but there has been a warming trend. But we're coming out of the so-called little ice age. There's been a warming trend since well into the 19th century. The warming rate doesn't match that well with the rates of increase of production of global carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I think it's what I would call a moral panic, and the Conservative policy has basically been to pay kind of lip service to it, but not to do anything that's terribly damaging to the economy. And I think that's the right policy.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to jump to a quick break. We're going to check in with the Rant Pack folks. Stay with us.
This is an important election, and the first thing I'll say about it is please, please, please go vote. Go vote. Because if you don't vote, somebody else is voting for you, and yes, you say it's going to negate your vote, but that's not the case. Go vote. Have a voice. You have a responsibility to vote. You have a right to vote. And I'm going to just step outside here. If you're female and you don't vote, you're slapping in the face all the women that came before us and fought for us to get the vote and to not be chattel. So go vote. Secondly, be a conscious voter. Find out what your candidate stands for and what the party you potentially are going to vote for. So find out what they stand for. And if you don't like it, change your vote. And finally, I will say, in my riding, there are two people that I would, one I would not vote for, no way, and one that I would vote for, absolutely, and I don't care which party they run for. The one that is the PC candidate is fatally, fatally not good, and the other one is really excellent, and it wouldn't matter which parties I will still vote for this person. Just vote.
All right, so Julie's message clearly, get out the vote, get out there and vote. Are people voting in the same droves that we need them to vote? I mean, we've got social media, we've got so many different avenues to get people out. Are we expecting to see the numbers in October that we need to see, Dave?
I'm expecting to see very high voter turnout, but here in Alberta, we have one of the lowest voter turnouts of any province, so definitely encouraging people to vote. Personally, I don't believe in strategic voting. I believe in voting in your principles, voting on your values, what you stand for, so that's how I'll be voting. Yeah. But I do understand that, people seem to be, the people who aren't conservative seem to be tired of the conservative government, so some of them are starting to look to strategic voting and trying to figure out who could potentially have the greatest chance of defeating the conservative candidate where they live.
And there's so much at stake, obviously. Our economy's not doing so well, clearly. A lot of people, I think you're right, are fed up with the current government. I think a lot of people are happy with the current government. It begs the question, when deciding on a candidate, do people vote with their convictions or with their wallet?
Oh, well, not everybody's the same.
Yeah?
Each party has a base of or core vote or base vote, which keeps the party alive, but which is not in itself big enough to win an election. And these tend to be conviction voters. They think that the party stands for something that they support, and so they're pretty loyal in their vote. So the way that you win in elections, you take your base and then you add to it other voters, and that's where the offers come in. We might call them pocketbook voters. It doesn't have to be on a pocketbook issue. There are other kinds of issues, like the niqab is more of an emotional issue, but you have to get some specific issue that appeals to people and bring them into your coalition, whereas your base is pretty much there all the time as long as you keep them satisfied. So it's a combination. There are some voters who are voting out of conviction. There are other voters who really are open to offers from different political parties, and it's not so much a matter of long-term conviction as what they think might be the best for them this time around.
The best for them financially, maybe, Dave. Do you think people get a little selfish around election time and cast that vote, thinking about their bank account?
People vote for different reasons.
Yeah.
Fear is a big driver in why people vote. Politicians know that. Sometimes they try to build up the fear in people, but most voters are, self-interested voters. They're voting in their self-interest, and so people vote for things that they think are going to benefit, their bottom line. And
there's a lot at stake. They've got families, obviously. Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So personally, I think that's why you see the child benefit checks going out a few weeks before the rate is dropped, and that's playing to people's self-interest to get people voting the way they want to.
Infrastructure announcements. Yeah. Sure.
And the party leaders and the parties certainly act as if these offers are important. Each party has a distinctive set of offers to voters. And you can kind of reverse engineer the coalition they're aiming at by deconstructing the offers that they make. Say, who would be attracted by that kind of offer? There are actually quite different types of voters that would be attracted by the NDP package of offers, or the Liberal, or the Conservative. Each one is distinctive, but they're all doing it. They all recognize the necessity of getting beyond their base of conviction voters to bring in other people with specific motivations.
You can only imagine the amount of research that goes into determining which policies and when you're going to bring them out.
There's a lot. All parties today, well, maybe not the smallest parties who couldn't afford it, but the major parties will all poll extensively to figure out what would be a logical coalition of voters, what kinds of voters are open to them, and then poll on the specifics of what might be in a platform. How would voters react to an offer of a certain type? So yeah, a lot of research does go into it.
Talk about the middle class. As far as I'm concerned, middle class probably should be the biggest, most talked about issue during this election. At times it is. I mean, let's be honest, these parties promising the world to the middle class. I kind of want to hear from both of you. I sort of know which way you're slanting thus far. Regardless, which party is going to really champion the middle class and why?
Well, I'm not sure which party will, but the Liberals, that's definitely what they're playing
Pardon
for.
me, which would be that party, given the opportunity? You think the Liberals, yeah?
That's what the messaging from the Liberals is they're trying to play for the middle class voters. Most of Trudeau's messages revolve around middle class voters. The NDP, they talk a little bit more about ordinary Canadians and equality for all, fairness for all of society, rising tides, raise all ships kind of thing. And then the Conservatives, they're also playing for family values, middle class voters. But I mean, to me, the messaging that's coming out, it looks like the Liberals are going the hardest for the middle class voter.
Is it viable?
Well, they've obviously been playing, the Liberals have been playing with your mind, Dave, because you've taken the Liberal talking point and made it the basis of your question. The Liberals are the only one who use middle class as a bell that they're ringing over and over. Each party has its own vocabulary that it uses, but in this election, middle class is the Liberal vocabulary. It's actually, it's a term that doesn't have much precise meaning. Middle class is, most people in Canada think of them, probably 80% or more, think of themselves as middle class, so it can be whatever you want it to be. You have to drill down further. Like the Conservative platform will appeal to parents with children. The Liberals are now competing very strongly for that vote with an actually even more generous offer than the Conservative offer. Mm-hmm. The NDP platform appeals particularly to public sector unions, which have been core support for the NDP for a long time. So each party is, middle class, but within that they have their own specific targets that are much more well-defined than just saying middle class in general.
The economy is the biggest issue. The environment's up there for sure. I think for people in my age group, my friends that have young families, the first thing on their mind is the economy. As far as campaigning, I mean, which is the better tool? Is it hope for a stronger economy, or is it fear of a worse economy?
Well, again, it's fear for a worse economy, because fear is a primary driver in voters. Stephen Harper, he went into previous elections. That was why he was elected, was he was supposed to be a great steward of the economy. So now when people go to vote, that's what they're going to say when they decide who they're going to vote for, is did he deliver? I mean, we've had 2 recessions under his watch, apparently, and other problems with the economy. The loonie is at a decade low, so these are all issues people have to decide if they're important to them or not.
All right, tonight we're going to jump to another rant pack break, folks. Stick with us.
The federal election coming up is turning out to be, I would say, one of the more entertaining federal elections we've had in a while. There's 3 parties that could all take it. It's looking good for any one of them at this point right now. What's interesting though, it's the global perspective that I'm seeing. Now with the economy taking center stage and things going down really badly, we see that our politicians are limited in some capacity. So what can Stephen Harper really do against OPEC or the next prime minister? They can all promise a whole bunch of stuff, all promise to be fiscally responsible and whatever they want to promise us right now. But we have to look towards the international scene now. So the election matters more and less at the same time. That's why I think it's interesting.
You did raise some good points. We're kind of getting a little bit long in the tooth, getting in on time here, guys. I wanted to, first, the advertisements, television, internet. I mean, how are these parties conducting themselves as Canadians? Are we proud the way that our party leaders are showcasing their would-be abilities right now through social media, television, the internet? I think it's a little negative, personally.
Well, it may be a little negative. It's actually very mild compared to previous advertisements. Each party has advertisements that are critical of the other leaders, but it's not the really kind of scary negative ads that parties have run in the past. That could change in the final weeks, but up until now, I'd say the ads have actually been pretty mild.
I guess we've got a different barometer. I mean, I look at what happens down south of the border. Obviously, a different ball game. Things get really negative really quickly down there. Dave, do you think there's potential for the the final home stretch here for things to get, unfortunately, a little ugly?
Depends what the polling numbers are. I mean, if the Conservatives see themselves in 3rd place, they've got the most cash. I do foresee them getting a little more ugly with their elections ads in the final few weeks here. But
just the Conservatives? Come on.
Well, they've got the most cash, so they're going to dump it out the door if they think they're in 3rd. But I actually agree with Dr. Flanagan. Compared to other campaigns, this election
has been toned down a little bit.
It's been pretty mild, in my opinion.
Well, maybe it's just my Twitter feed then. And I got to be honest, the growing number of posts from these little self-serving party minions promoting really their own acute tunnel vision is just it's starting to overwhelm me. I mean, do these digital warriors, do they really have any clout? Is anybody listening?
Well,
do they
I think
have any influence?
I thought you were talking about paid advertising.
No, I was.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's what people say on social media. Of course, the volume of social media is so much greater than it was in any previous election, and a lot of it is extremely snarky.
Isn't it?
But that's different from paid advertising. And a lot of that is not actually party manufactured by the parties.
That's
it's
right.
People who are getting into the game themselves.
Getting into the game themselves, but are they maybe tarnishing that party's reputation by?
Well, everybody's doing it, so I think it's kind of one thing I will say is what's really new, and Dave may want to comment on this too, since social media is kind of your beat. Volunteers are using social media in this campaign to expose candidates of all parties who have said crazy things in the past.
That's a witch hunt. That's my problem with it. Exactly.
Yeah, but there's been so much of it that I think voters are looking at it, maybe having a chuckle, but it doesn't seem to be moving the dial in support for parties. But some of this, like there's a student group at McGill that's putting out this website called the True North News, and they've got some very entertaining stuff there, which none of the parties seem to have found. So I think the volunteers are sort of outstripping the parties in their ability to use social media for purposes of opposition research.
They're mining information.
Yeah, this is a new development. We haven't seen this in opposition research. Used to be dominated by the parties. They had specialists in digging all this stuff up, but now you've got young people with active cell phones who are doing it for themselves.
Crazy.
It's a very interesting development.
Social media, I mean, there is a lot of civil discourse, don't get me wrong, and I think that's great, that's productive. But these fringe, I call them minions, do they have really any influence during
They
this
do,
election?
actually.
You think
Social
so? Yeah.
media has never played as an important role in any campaign as this one. And what we're seeing is these people, these minions, like you like to refer to them, are actually knocking candidates off. And lots of candidates in every province being knocked off by this stuff.
Yeah.
So
We've seen, of course, the Liberal Nose Hill.
yeah,
Or,
the guy who
Skyview.
we've seen a lot of it. Okay,
Yeah, no, it's true.
social media is playing a bigger role in this campaign than ever before. What we're going to see over the next few election cycles here is Canadians are going to start to get desensitized to this sort of, this person said this on Facebook 10 years ago, and people are going to say, you know what, I really don't care about that. I care about the issues.
Because that's my beef with the whole thing. I really hope you're right.
Well, some of it is genuine though.
No, it's true.
These minions can uncover things that perhaps the opposition research isn't able to uncover, and it really does change the nature of the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd be remiss, shifting gears here, not to talk about Bill C-51. I just want to quote Edward Snowden real quick on what he had to say about Bill C-51. He says, "We cannot throw away all of our rights, all of our liberties, all of our traditions, because we are afraid of rare instances of criminal activity." I mean, is the bill that bad? Are we really in danger of altering the Canadian way of life?
Personally, I believe if you want to, if you're some sort of oversight agency and you want to look into the individual life of a Canadian, there's no reason why you shouldn't go to a judge, present your evidence, and get a warrant.
It's impossible. I mean, it's very hard to argue that. I would have to.
That's what I would like to see personally, and I don't agree with Canadians sacrificing their individual rights for some sort of supposed fear-based thing that might not even actually exist. So to me, if you have a reason to be snooping into individuals' lives, you can go to a judge, present your evidence, get a warrant. That's the way we've always done it, and that's the way we should continue to do it.
It's an excellent point. Hard to deny.
Well,
hard to deny.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different on that. I think that we are effectively in a state of war with the more extreme versions of Islam. We didn't declare the war. They declared it against us, but we've seen the action on our soil. There was an attempt to storm the House of Commons and assassinate politicians, including the Prime Minister. The Toronto 18 had a plan for mass murder on a gigantic scale. Who knows how many people might have been killed with that plan.
Are people going to treat this election
these
as
are
a referendum for Bill C-51?
This is one of many issues. It's a little unclear because both the Conservatives and the Liberals supported the bill. The NDP is the only one to clearly oppose it.
Although Trudeau has made some statements, sounds like, might
he
not
tried
be
to
the end all.
he tried to straddle it. He said, "Well, we'll vote for it, but we'll amend it later." So you can't take the election as a referendum on this bill. But I think it's I don't know that it's that important by itself. I think it's in a suite of issues that kind of fit together. The niqab, Bill C-51, the question of revocation of citizenship. There's the question of deployment of Canadian military forces in the Middle East in what way or at all. There's a number of these issues that are kind of related in people's minds. I think taken together, they form a dimension that's important. Probably as individual issues, maybe no one is that important.
We're going to jump to our final break, folks. Stay with us. We're going to come back, wrap things up with a little bit of a game.